Odelia, I have a question that rose from the last podcast you did. How do you know for sure that OSA is listening to your podcasts? Are you 100% sure about it? I would think that if I were an OSA staff member and was constantly listening to all these master works that you're regularly putting out, I would think twice about continuing in Scientology. After all, the staff are eating lots of crow and humiliated for nothing and sleep deprived, etc. What benefits do they have? I have a hard time thinking how a normal person in his senses could continue there after all the bombarding information that they listen to. They could think, oh, what a bunch of bad news and theta about Scientology, but I'm sure that from all of the sordid information, there would be, even if one point that could cause them to make a switch and start their critical thinking that have been so abused. Further, I assume that if they're listening to you, they're listening to all the rest too. It seems next to impossible to continue conducting routine work and think straight. Do you know of any such event that you helped a staff member to get out of there? Okay, lots here. So, no, I'm not 100% sure. I wouldn't stake my life, for example, on the idea that OSA is listening to every word that I say. However, I understand that they maintain a pretty good, tabs on all the critics, all the work that we put out, what we're saying. And so the only way for them to be able to keep tabs like that is to either watch the videos, read the transcripts of the videos, look at the, show notes or whatever. I mean, somehow they're going to have to get some idea of all the content that's being put out. And they are meticulous and they are detailed and they do have the time and resources to do this kind of thing. Because the thing about the OSA guys is they don't have anything else to do all day except this kind of stuff. This is their job. At least for a couple of them it is. As far as whether they're actually having Sea Org members listening to every single one of our, and by our, I mean not just me, but all the Scientology critics, whether they're reading every article, watching every video, I can't say for sure. I don't know how it's organized up, but I do know that they monitor these lines. That I do know for sure. And Karen has spoken about this, of course, and she worked at the Office of Special Affairs. So I take her word for it that, they're keeping a finger on the pulse of the critic community because they, like I said, don't really have a whole lot else to do all day. Now, as far as the things you just mentioned here about there being doubts raised about that, well, this is why they'll either hire people to do it, and maybe tell them or instruct them to look for certain key ideas or, threats or something that they're looking for, and otherwise just write reports about what the person basically said in their, video. Or, I mean, that's how I would do it. What's the basic 2-3 line summary you can get from this if you can reduce it down that much? Maybe you shouldn't be able to. I mean, maybe it would be longer than that. But whatever, how can you summarize this information, put it into a database, it kind of, index it, etc. I mean, that's how they keep tabs on all this stuff. And they use computers and stuff to keep track of this. And they also really, really monitor connections. They love knowing who knows who's connected to who's influencing who, because this is their influence web so that they can, look at, okay, well, if this guy is influencing these 3 people and they're influencing, these 20, then if we can get one of the middlemen, we can get to them and get them turned or get them disrupted or something, then we disrupt this whole network, right? This is why they keep tabs on this stuff. And they also they're obsessed with finding out where the enemy lines that we spew, as far as they're concerned, saying things like the staff don't make enough money to live, to them, that's an enemy line. And that must have come from some suppressive person. And so they want to always trace down where these things are coming from, right? So they're kind of obsessive about that because Hubbard was. Okay, so here's the thing about the Office of Special Affairs guys, though. Every person in the Sea Org who is in the Office of Special Affairs wants to be there. Okay, this is crucial. It's a very, very important requirement. They are already Scientologists. They are already Sea Org members. They are hardcore. They are fanatical, as dedicated as you can get. And then they go, yes, I want to work in the Office of Special Affairs. I want to be in the Internet unit, or I want to be over, these people. So this is somebody who's already got a gumption to want to, deal with and take out critics and bad people and us N theta horrible folks, right? They perceive that we are literally enemies of humanity. So that's how they see their job. They see themselves as crusaders, as Jedi Knights, right? As Neo in the Matrix. I mean, they see themselves as on the side of Zion, right? Like that's the positioning and framing of their worldview. So everything we say are calculated lies that are being fed to us or that we're inventing ourselves, us critics, in order to, tell you guys about. And so they've already got shields up, walls up, everything's, nothing's going to get through them sort of thing. The way you bust through that, of course, is that something has to happen to them personally. There has to be some personal betrayal, and then they turn. Because I have had former OSA staff on this channel. I've interviewed them. I've talked to them about this. And they said, yeah, when you're going through this material, or you're looking at the critics like me and what we have to say, or Leah and Mike, and, the heavy hitters, not just me. They're not tuned in to accept this information as true. Everything we say is automatically rejected. Right? But if something happens to them personally, which it almost inevitably is going to, because the nature of the Scientology and the Sea Org, eventually there's something, not that they necessarily hear or see from us, but something Scientology does that gets them to go, oh my God, what? And then connections start happening, right? Then the walls start coming down and the mental barriers start coming down, because now they feel that they have been victimized somehow. And they have been, probably, sent to the RPF, made to stay up for days on end, the sleep deprivation, etc., right? All of those things become horrible when the truth of the situation starts coming to light, that you are being victimized and that you are being used, that you as a Sea Org member, you're just a pawn in somebody else's game. And your whole, vision of being a Jedi Knight or Neo or something just kind of disappears when you're faced with the stark reality of wearing blue, black and gray in the RPF for the next 3 to 5 years. I mean, that kind of stuff is a real wake-up call, and you really start looking at and realigning what's been going on, and you see that, what you've been telling yourself is really just a bunch of crap. So that's how the wake-up starts happening. And the epitome of this, not somebody I worked with, but the epitome of this is Mike Rinder. He was the head of the Office of Special Affairs. He was at the top, and he was there for years. And then he got busted, and he was put in the hole, and he was there for years. A lot of physical, emotional, psychological degradation and abuse. And he still stuck with it because of this idea that, you're one of the elite, one of the hardcore, one of the people saving the world. And you just need to get through this time period of awfulness, and you have the rest of your eternity as a Scientologist and Sea Org member to salvage this planet, get your own life in order, get up the bridge, get OT'd, make all these wonderful things happen. These little setbacks like ending up in the hole, we'll deal with that. So, and he tried to deal with that until it just became obvious after months and years of degrading behavior and abuse. Oh, finally the light dawned. When he was over in the UK, and he realized, oh, I don't have to go back to that. I don't want to go back to that. I can't go back to that, because reality suddenly hit. And that kind of epiphany, type moment is what every single cult member has to have. They have to have some kind of wake-up call like that, and it's almost always a personal one. Doesn't have to be. Could be a loved one of theirs is victimized or something too. And they are right there watching it happen, and that's their wake-up call, right? It could be, so those kind of bonds can also trigger somebody's, empathy and emotions and compassion. So that's kind of how all that works. Didn't mean to go on that whole roll about that, but it seemed appropriate to the question. So this is why the OSA guys who are assigned to this work are not the kind of people who are going to crack, or they, like I said, they farm it out to non-Scientologists who just have things that they're looking for, and that's what they do. That may or may not be true. I'm just telling you, one scenario of what I think they might do in order to organize this. They could have this whole thing organized up completely differently, but the one thing I know that they have to do in OSA when they're monitoring our stuff is they have to have an OT to do it, because we're sitting here talking Xenu and Duke of Chug and all this stuff like all the time. We just drop these references all over the place. Xenu, you know. Well, some lower level Scientologists can't hear that because that's OT material. So they have to have OTs, and they don't have a lot of OTs to do this work in the Office of Special Affairs. So I think that's one reason why they might farm it out to public or hired, people. Okay, so there you go.